You guys, I have been waiting so long to film this video. Today we are talking about these 5 books that have something to do with nature, and they absolutely changed the way I live my life. Each one of these books changed the way that I think about the world, whether that is when I'm out in nature, the way I talk about the environment or climate change with other people, and how I spend every single day and week working my job in the energy efficiency space. We have both fiction and nonfiction on this list because both have impacted me in incredible amounts. And part of the reason I waited so long to actually sit down and film this video is because I had trouble paring it down to just 5, and I could probably spend a full hour talking about different environmental or nature-themed books that changed the way that I see the world. But for the sake of time, I've cut it down to just 5. If you want to see more videos like this one, or want to hear about those other books that I really loved, let me know down in the comments and I can make this into a series. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, our first book from the list is, I actually read it on my Kindle, but this is The Overstory by Richard Powers. I read this book this past winter, and honestly, it healed my seasonal depression. Like, it just took me to a completely different world. As a whole, it is just so beautifully written. The way that he tackles really heavy concepts, including the destruction of the natural world, without making it feel really depressing, honestly, I'm very impressed by that. It also covers an ensemble cast, so you go through different POVs throughout the first half of the book, and then they all start to come together. I love that format of writing, and the way that he wrote each character felt super realistic. Like, I was taken into the world of that character, and it was just really beautiful. It also shifted my perspective on how humans learn to care for the environment. It covers, as I mentioned, it's an ensemble cast, I think like 9 or 10 different main stories, and you see how each of them learns to appreciate and love and maybe even fight for the planet, but each of them does it in such a vastly different way. It's just really cool, and as someone in their 20s who does care about the environment, I kind of assumed that a lot of people in my field at least had a similar path, but I think this book kind of showed me that that's not the case, and everyone's journey can be different. It can be early in their childhood, or it can be in their last years of their life, and either way, that is a beautiful thing. One path is not necessarily better than the others. It just made me think a little differently about how people can contribute to the environment. I will probably reread this one. I do know they're making a Netflix adaptation, but they haven't released when that's going to come out yet, so I'll probably try to reread it just before it comes out to get it fresh in my head. But yes, The Overstory by Richard Powers, I highly recommend. I recommend all of these, but there's the first one. This next one, you guys, I think this one is probably my favorite one on this list, and it is Rooted by Leonda Lynn Haupt. Life at the Crossroads of Science, Nature, and Spirit. So it talks about how humans interact with the natural world and how we can find spirituality in that, and it's just really beautiful. I read this on a road trip around Washington State last September, not realizing, like, I packed it into my bag, not realizing that the author is from Washington, and she actually uses a lot of examples and imagery from Washington State, so it was amazing. It was the first time I'd ever been to the Pacific Northwest, and having this book kind of guide me along the way, it was magical, to say the least. While it is nonfiction technically, it does kind of read like a narrative. You're learning about her story and how she has come to appreciate nature and find the magic in the forest. And rather than the science, it more talks about the human experience with nature. I got a lot of life lessons out of this one, I think because I was just reading it for a straight week when I was out camping in the woods. It helped me really internalize a lot of these. One of the big ones I took away from this book was the lesson of detachment. So detaching yourself from the physical world and, not taking things super personally and kind of letting go of the superficial ideas that we are taught our entire lives in this society. And then the second was just having compassion for all living beings, humans, trees, animals, approaching life with a smile, laughing with your friends. And if I recommended you pick up one book from this list, it is Rooted. One other thing that I forgot about until I opened this back up just now, but there are these beautiful illustrations on some of the pages that just depict like kind of what the vibe is about the entire book. But, there's mushrooms, there's snails and leaves, there's ferns and pine cones, there's some frogs, some wolves. It's just really beautiful. That's the second book. This next one is actually a book that I read for an environmental anthropology class in college, but I found it really, really fascinating, and it didn't feel like reading a textbook. I think it was published by Yale University Press, and I believe the two authors, Jessica Barnes and Michael R. Dove. Jessica Barnes is an assistant professor at the University of South Carolina, and Michael R. Dove is a professor at Yale University. It is very interesting and really changed the way that I communicate about climate change. I don't even know if I said the title, but it's called Climate Cultures: Anthropological Perspectives on Climate Change. And the book starts by pointing out the fact that climate discourse has not been around since the 1960s, as a lot of us kind of imagine the climate change movement to start. It goes back centuries because indigenous cultures have been talking about these things and coming up with solutions for centuries. And what we talk about with the environmentalism movement that started in the 60s, that's just kind of the modern version of it. And even now it's changing in the way that we talk about it. But once it kind of points that out and is like, hey, you need to think about the way that you're talking about it, because currently the way that you're talking about it is ignoring all of the ideas and discoveries that these indigenous cultures have already made. So let's actually give them some credit. Then it goes into talking about what those things were. So it goes into climate change and the future of Egypt's water. I think my favorite one was the uniqueness of the everyday, herders, and invasive species in India. They also have stories from Mexico, Chile, and Vietnam. I don't know, I enjoyed all of them, taught me a lot, and kind of just shifted my perspective and the way I communicate about climate change. If you are an environmental professional or deal with climate change in some capacity in your work or life, then highly recommend reading this book. It will change your perspective, change the way you communicate, and just change the way you think. So that's the third one on my list. The next one did go kind of crazy on Book Talk for a while in 2021. This was actually my first fiction book that was kind of nature themed, and my biology professor recommended it to me, and I'm so grateful for him for doing that. It is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I remember reading it for the first time. I'm pretty sure I read the second half in a day, and I was just so happy to realize that there is a whole genre of books that are fiction and have something to do with nature. So in the sense that it changed my life, it kind of opened my eyes up to this entire new genre, and it was really comforting. I had really only read fantasy and mainstream books in the past, and realizing that there were so many books I could read written by people who also care as much about the environment as I do was really validating and exciting at the same time. It is a mystery book, but it also intertwines messages of environmental justice, biodiversity, and classism a little bit in a pretty beautiful way. And Owens really knows how to write about nature. I think that is what got me so excited. She's a poet. That's all I'll say. She knows how to write about nature. And I think also this book changed my life in the sense that when I was reading it, I was applying for jobs. It was my senior year of college, and I was really nervous about how much money I would be making as an environmental scientist, because environmental scientists are kind of notorious for not making a lot of money, and that made me anxious, going into the world on my own for the first time ever in my life. So this book kind of follows this woman. Her name is Kaya, from when she was very young and very poor. It shows how through her passion for the environment, her curiosity, and her talent as an artist, she became this really successful author and scientist. And I think it just comforted me as I was applying to all of these jobs that, no matter where I end up and how much money I end up making, as long as I am doing what I want to be doing and continuing to be curious and continuing to have love for the earth, that is all that really matters. I have a feeling a lot of people watching this video already have read this book, but if you haven't and you want a comforting, fun read, then I would recommend Where the Crawdads Sing. This last book is Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver. If you are looking for more nature-themed books, honestly, any of her books are fantastic. But this book specifically, if you identify as a woman and you are in the environmental or science space, this is very empowering. It follows the lives of 3 different women at different stages in their lives and how they interact with nature. One of them is an entomologist, one of them is a park ranger, and the other one is a farmer. And you get to see how all 3 of them have kind of learned to be free and express their wild side, and also how beautiful it can be to live in a very unrushed sort of way, disconnected from society. It takes place in Appalachia, and a lot of them don't really interact with a lot of other humans on a day-to-day. So it kind of emphasizes this idea that even when you are completely alone, you don't have any internet, you are just sitting in the woods by yourself, life can still be so exciting. There are birds chirping all around. There's so much life around you, and you can find so much excitement and beauty in that. So for me, it kind of challenged that idea that as a girl in my 20s, I have to live in a city and have this crazy wildlife. I can kind of find that excitement in the natural world. This one was really good. I also want to point out the cover. I remember when I first wanted to read it and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like this book. But it's like all these drawings of butterflies and moths, and there's a Luna moth, which is one of my favorites, and is also native to Appalachia. One other thing is I live in Maryland, so I'm pretty close to that region, and I kind of wanted to learn more about it because it has a really interesting history, and I've been kind of hiking there more. So Barbara Kingsolver has books that take place in different parts of the country, and she does a lot of research for those regions. So if you are new to a place or just want to explore more about your own region, you can probably find one of her books that go into that. But those are the 5 books that really impacted my life and changed my perspectives on environmentalism, the environmental movement, climate change activism, and how I communicate about all of it. If you have book recommendations, I would love to hear them in the comments. I'm always looking for more books to read that explore these ideas. And if you're still here, why not hit that subscribe button? It really helps me out, and I would hate for you to miss the next video. So thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you next week. Bye!